Thank you so much. I just got the notification that we're recording. So thank you so much for having me, inviting me to chat with you guys. My name's Sandy Biello. I own Beacon Media Studio. Prior to all of this, I spent about 12 years in the home improvement industry and worked my way all around the company. Started in sales, went into customer service, went into managerial roles, supply chain. Honestly, what happened was at any time there was position that needed to be filled, whether it was a brand new position or a position where somebody left, they had to tap me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you probably don't know how to do this, but would you like to figure it out?" And so I did. And one of the most fruitful ones where they tapped me on the shoulder was home show marketing, and then really then expanded my marketing repertoire from there. So I didn't go to formal school for marketing. I would say like I went to the school of hard knocks of really actually being in there and learning from the best of the best and making it happen. So from there, the last 5 years have been all marketing all day long. And one of the best and favorite things about marketing for me is just when you think you've figured it out, something new comes around, and then you get to learn something new and evolve and change. And so my latest evolution is Beacon Media Studio. I help small businesses really shine a light on what they do best and doing that through strategic storytelling. And so one of the biggest questions I end up hearing all of the time is how do I actually reach the right people online? And so the truth is that when you try to talk to everyone, you often end up connecting with no one. And so that's why I chose this topic specifically to share with the chamber today. And so I'm going to walk you through the key steps that take you through identifying who your ideal audience really is, choose the right platforms so you don't waste your time, tailoring your content so it actually resonates with your audience, building engagement and community with those people. And then once you've done all of that, measuring it and then taking that and doing small tweaks and adjustments so that you can continue to improve and, like I mentioned earlier, evolve. And so by the end, you'll have practical steps that you can apply along the way. Feel free to raise your Zoom hand, and I guess Amy, you'll just let me know when somebody has a question, and I'll be happy to answer.
Yep.
Okay, great. And so the really start of this is your foundation, and that is knowing who you actually are talking to. And so your ideal audience isn't just anyone who can buy from me. It's the specific group of people who are likely to connect with you, purchase from you, and stick around. And if you do it in the right way, they become your advocates, your marketers, and your tribe. And so I like to break this down into three categories. And I find that they are in the order of easy to find information to a little bit harder to find information. And so demographics, so ASL, age, gender, income, location, and then you have your psychographics. So this is the things that they value, how they live their life, what they're interested in. And then probably my favorite would be behavior. So how and where they like to shop, how they get their information, how they communicate and connect with others, and then what problems can we solve for them and how can we solve their problems. So, one of my clients I am going to share with is Bayside Bull. I like to use them as a great example because they are a barbecue restaurant, but they also have a really thriving catering side as well. And so for the restaurant, their audience I have lovingly named the barbecue bro. And so that is the guy that likes hearty food, lives locally, is committed to eating pit beef sandwiches, and has a lot of local pride. Now, the catering side has a completely different audience. That's often a bride-to-be, her mom, the event coordinator. And so they're going to be looking for a more stylish, curated event. So they're going to care a lot more about presentation, what's trending, and a polished feel. And so somehow I've created this relationship in my mind when I create their content is that the bride-to-be could be the barbecue bro's little sister, his niece, his daughter, or even his significant other. And so this is where you'll see where it's one business and then two very distinct personas, and then along with that, different messaging. And so even within that audience, those audiences can evolve as well. And so while your audience type may stay the same, their generation can change. So if we're going back and thinking about brides, the average age of a bride in the US right now has actually slightly increased from before, is now 28 to 30. And so if you think about that 10 years ago, those are strongly millennials. And now today they're becoming your Gen Z. And so if you're marketing to brides like they're millennials, you could be missing the mark. And so a common mistake is not reassessing your audience and their demographics over time. And that means you're going to be missing those opportunities to connect properly. And so my point is when you're defining and updating your audience clearly, you stop guessing and actually really connecting to them how they communicate. And so once you actually know who you're talking to, the next best question is where are they spending their time? So this is kind of a quick, rough rundown, in simplest terms of what I call the most popular platforms. And so Facebook is going to be strongest for your community and groups, whereas Instagram is going to be for lifestyle, and that's visual with both video and photo. They started out as originally photo and evolved into video. And then with TikTok, it's all about trends. Although when I say trends, that's changing. So when you first think about TikTok back in 2020, it was all about cute dance trends. And now they are utilizing trends differently. But it's still important to take a scroll on there, see where the trends start, because they sometimes over time eventually pop over onto Instagram too. So occasionally you can get ahead of the game on Instagram by looking at what TikTok is doing. And then short form video obviously is where TikTok thrives, although they do now allow for longer video. LinkedIn is going to be your hub for professionals and B2B. I also see that there are a lot of nonprofits on there as well. And so here's where I see end up happening and where I see a lot of business owners end up unfortunately getting exhausted very quickly is that they try to post everywhere. So that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube, all at the same time. And then at first they're really excited because they feel like things are happening. But then they get really overwhelmed very quickly. And so then posting slows down, the quality dips, and then nothing feels like it's working. So then you compare that to a business that picks just one or two platforms where the audience actually spends time, and then they can show up consistently, post better content, and actually see results. And so that's where the demographics come in. And now this information I got from pewresearch.org. So there has been some controversy or, debate on when Gen Z ends and starts. So this is what they say. And so this is how each generation uses each platform in the US. And I say US because if you're looking at global, that's a whole other bag of marbles that I don't want to open. Gen Z is heavily concentrated on TikTok and Instagram. Whereas millennials are strong on Instagram and Facebook, and then they're also the largest group on LinkedIn. Gen X is highly active on Facebook, and then they're also growing on Instagram as well. Whereas baby boomers remain most active on Facebook. And then I do just want to make a quick point about YouTube is that YouTube actually expands all across all generations. And I like to say that because I don't want to discount YouTube at all because it's a really great source for education and information. So what I often see is a lot of people using the platforms as your gateway, and then if you want to expand on a topic, you'll end up going to YouTube and following that same person on YouTube if they are interested in that first 90 seconds that they found on Instagram, for example. So the point isn't that one generation belongs just on one platform. It's that certain groups tend to concentrate in specific places. If your ideal audience, again, are brides, for instance, the average bride today is Gen Z. So you might want to concentrate your efforts on Instagram and TikTok. But if your audience may be retirees, Facebook might be your more powerful tool, or even LinkedIn, so catching them right before they retire and they're still in that active professional space. And so, while we're here, and I'm glad I included, and I see some WhatsApp people in here, is that print's not dead, and there's also important times to use that. It might be the right move as well. It depends if your audience values tangible, high trust mediums like local magazines, event programs, and direct mail. And so print can complement your digital strategy. So it's not necessarily about digital versus print. It's choosing the channel that meets your audience where they are. So if you're trying to force them to find you, they're not going to go through that effort. It's about showing up consistently on one or two channels, whether it's digital or print, instead of half-heartedly across five. And so now that you've actually figured out where you're going to do it, let's talk about what you're actually going to say. So your content should sound like it was written for your audience, not just for you. So, going again back to the barbecue bro, I like to use those bold food shots, playful, even snarky captions. I like to give him a lot of snippy personality and a casual tone. But then for the bride-to-be audience and the catering audience, the post shift, and I like to do more styled catering photos, softer design, captions that bring more elegance and celebration in the content. And so here are three simple rules that you can use. You want to use their language. So talk like your audience and not your industry jargon. So it might not be how you speak on a daily basis. It could be how you speak on a daily basis, and that makes things easier for you, but you might want to check yourself to make sure that's actually how they would speak. You also want to solve their problems. And you probably have heard this before is benefits versus features. So an example of this is a salon might say, we offer balayage highlights. And that's a feature. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to people. That's just a function and a service they provide. The benefit is that you leave with a fresh, modern look that lasts longer in between appointments, which, depending on how you do it, can potentially save you time and money. And so the big bonus is also to excel the experience. So when you come into the salon, we're going to give you a nice long scalp massage. And so that's going to melt away all of your worries and you can come escape at the salon. So you're selling the experience of escaping through your scalp massage. So that is a huge thing is understanding the difference between features and benefits. And then the third is showing your personality. So people like to connect with people, not logos. And so you'll see that a lot of the best content out there is when employees are having fun, they're connecting with their owners, and you're actually seeing the people that are involved in the day-to-day of the business. And so here's a quick exercise you can try later. I want you to take your last post and then reframe it from your audience's perspective. Ask yourself, does this sound like me talking about my business, or does this sound like me trying to solve my audience's problem? That shift alone can really change how your content lands. And so this part, engagement, is actually my favorite part. And that is where the magic really happens. Engagement's not just about likes, it's about building relationships that lead to loyalty. And here's something that I notice a lot with businesses is that they treat social media like a billboard and then they end up struggling to grow because they are just putting the content out there and it feels really one-sided. On the other hand, businesses that treat social media like a conversation are the ones that end up gaining more traction. So when they ask questions, reshare customer photos, collaborate with other local businesses, people stop scrolling and they actually start engaging. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even something like a quick poll, thanking a customer publicly helps people feel included. And sometimes it's not really a huge lift, too, because you can go on Instagram, somebody that has mentioned you as a business, you can reshare that into your own stories. And that helps bring more advocates because they get excited and say, oh, wow, they shared it. And so maybe next time I take an awesome picture of what this company did, they might reshare it again. It's kind of like that person's 10 seconds of celebrity. And so a lot of businesses tend to miss the fact that when you genuinely engage with and appreciate your audience, they often turn into your biggest advocates. They'll talk about you to their friends, they'll share your posts without even you asking, they'll sell the business for you. And that kind of loyalty is priceless. It's marketing you don't even have to pay for. So it's not always about the view count on your reel, it's about building trust and creating advocates for your business. And so the last bit is measurement. And so because you can't improve what you don't track. And here's the simple exercise you can do. Open up your analytics and look at your top three posts from the last 30 days. What do they have in common? Is it the format? Is it the topic? Is it the tone? That's your audience showing what you care about. So let me give you this example on Instagram. And this is what your analytics will look like for a reel specifically. So your views are going to be how many times your reel was seen. So this is your reach. Your likes are the lightest form of engagement. It's just a quick signal of interest. Your comments are certainly stronger than likes because they actually take effort. You actually have to think about what you say, and they signal some conversation happening. Shares is when your audience thought it was valuable enough to send along to somebody else. A big trust signal and can potentially bring new audiences into your sphere. And then saves are my gold standard. That means that saves mean your content was valuable enough that they want to come back to it later and they don't want to lose it. And so we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into this specific screenshot so you can kind of better understand what all of it actually means. The views right here, it's had 107,000 views, but that also means that it saw 79,000 unique accounts. So that means that 79,000 unique people saw it. And then of those 79,000 people, some people saw it over and over again, whether that meaning that it was really engaging, it was very aesthetically pleasing. That's why you would see multiple view counts. Now, with the likes, that's great. It's a quick appreciation of the work that you're doing, which is awesome. These three down the road are where the magic really happens in my mind is so conversations. That means that they are talking about, wow, I really need to go to this place, or I've been to this place, and they might be a good spot for your testimonials that you can pull out and reshare those comments. And they might actually even be tagging their friends saying, hey, Jenny, we should go to this place. And then sharing I think is awesome is because they could be saying and converting at this point. They could tell Jenny instead, sending her a message and saying, we should go check out this place this weekend. Check out this video, and this is what we're doing on Saturday. So these are where I think conversions start happening, is when the shares start happening. And then the saves, again, are my gold standard because they actually cared enough that they're saying, I don't want to forget about this, and I want to maybe share this with my husband at home who doesn't have Instagram for whatever reason. Maybe I want to also remember that this fall festival is happening 3 weeks from now. So I want to make sure that I save this so I have all the details and the information. And so if you're only chasing likes, you're missing the real story. And the comments and the shares and the saves are where you're really seeing your true connection. And so the best marketers aren't guessing, they're actually learning from the data and then doubling down on what works. So my recommendation is to check your analytics once a month, share what those are, and pick one small adjustment to test, and then keep building it from there. So see what's working and then do more of that. And then obviously what's not working, don't do as much of that. And realize that when you're on social media, you want to treat it as it could potentially be the first time anybody's ever seen you. So just keep going and provide more consistency in your work. And so really the key reminder in all of this is marketing isn't really about talking louder, it's about talking smarter to the right people and then in the right place and in the right way. And so obviously here to help answer any questions, and I hope you guys found it valuable. And if you want to reach out, happy to do so. And again, thank you for letting me chat with you.
Thank you, Sandy. Brooke and I just had to evacuate for a hot minute because the the alarm started going off. So if you covered this, I apologize. Did you talk? I stepped back in when it said when you said the analytics. Did you talk about frequency and how much you should be posting?
I didn't. And it really depends on how much you can maintain. And so that is really big is consistency rather than trying to do all of the things all of the time. When you can say, I can consistently, well, I do have a minimum. I say that you have to at least post twice a week just to acknowledge to people that you exist. But if you can do more, that's awesome. But you also want to make sure you're consistent. That's really big for me is that if you were posting 5 times a day and then you dropped off for 2 weeks, people are going to be like, did this place closed? Are they okay? Are they in trouble? What's going on? So if you can provide some consistency and you know that you can do 3 times a week, that's awesome. And then if you can add on 2 extra days because it's an event coming up or if it's busy or anything like that, awesome. But make sure you at least start with what you can do.
Ashley just said, "Thank you, Sandy. Great presentation." Does anybody else have any other questions?
This is Ray. I don't have a question, but I just want to weigh in on something that Sandy said, which is really important. The whole thing about, knowing your audience and your client knowing their audience is really super important. And sometimes I would say you have to kind of maybe lead your client down the road that you want them to go in. And what I mean by that is, so I have a client, and I had been trying based on the type of business that this which was a veterinary hospital. I had been trying to get my client, the owner of the veterinary hospital, to get on TikTok. And she resisted for quite a long time because she thought TikTok was for her kids and not for her. And she thought it was like the wrong audience segment for her business. Well, I finally persuaded her to get on TikTok, and she creates the silliest, funniest videos in a positive way. And she has 7,700 followers on TikTok. And so sometimes the advice that you can bring to a client to kind of push them toward a platform that does work well with their business can be really invaluable. And my client is now thrilled that I persuaded her to get on TikTok because she's got almost 8,000 followers on TikTok, which has led to increase in her veterinary business. So I just wanted to mention the portion of this presentation. Well, the presentation was all good because it's Sandy, but the portion of the presentation where she talked about, knowing your audience, targeting your audience, and making sure that you gear your message to your audience, super important. So that's all I was going to say. I don't have a question. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I appreciate your extra comments. It does bring into mind when I was talking about how the ages of brides change, but the person stays the same. That goes across for a lot of things. Is that when you started your business, you might have been your ideal client, which made it super easy in the beginning to talk like your client because you were that client. But then over time, as you become more seasoned or your business expands, you might be aging away from who your ideal client is. So you might just want to tweak and kind of check yourself every once in a while. It was like, and the reality is we all get older. And so potentially we step away personality wise from potentially what our ideal client is, and that's totally okay too.
Kind of use Taylor Swift as a perfect example for that, right? Like when she started when she was 14 and now she's 40.
Yep,
Had to shift a little bit.
exactly.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Sandy? Got another good thank you, super helpful. I love the clarity and actionable steps from Christina. How about does anybody in here have any thoughts on what you would like to see in the next marketing series moving forward now that we have a great base from Sandy? Anything that she talked about that you would like to dive into deeper? All right. Well, if you think of anything, let us know. We're always looking for new topics um, for these webinars. So if no one has anything else, let me stop oh, great information from Daisy. Let me stop the recording.